There comes a moment in every soul's journey when silence feels louder than noise. When the things you once tolerated, the chaos, the pretending, the half-love start to burn quietly inside you. You can't name it at first. You just know that something inside you refuses to keep bending. You wake up one day and realize you've outgrown your own coping mechanisms. The way you used to shrink yourself to keep peace now feels unbearable. The way you tolerated disrespect disguised as love, avoidance disguised as calm, or constant overgiving disguised as kindness, it doesn't fit anymore. And you don't even feel angry about it. You just feel done. That's the strange grace of maturing. The quiet rebellion that doesn't need a scene, only a steady boundary. Mature souls don't scream when they've had enough. They simply stop participating in what hurts. It's not ego, it's evolution. Carl Jung once said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And maybe this is what he meant, not the becoming itself, but the shedding. The refusal to keep living as the wounds echo. If you're listening right now and something inside you feels heavy, this story is for you. It's not about perfection or enlightenment. It's about the sacred art of no longer abandoning yourself just to belong. It's about learning to walk away, not in bitterness, but in peace. So take a breath. Let's walk together through the quiet places inside you that are trying to grow. Because when your soul begins to mature, the world around you starts to look different, not because it changed, but because you finally see it for what it is. And if you find pieces of yourself in these words, the tired parts, the forgiving parts, the parts that want to stop fighting for love, that never fights back, stay. Don't rush away. This space is for you. If you ever needed a sign that you're not too much, not too soft, not too late, this is it. You're just evolving. And before we dive deeper, take a moment to honor yourself for being here, for choosing to listen, to reflect, to feel. It means you're already doing the work your soul has been waiting for. If you find value in this journey, if it feels like someone finally put your heart into words, stay connected. Subscribe, share, or simply keep listening. Because sometimes, healing begins when we no longer feel alone in it. There's a kind of tiredness that no sleep can fix. It's the exhaustion of pretending that everything is fine when it isn't. The exhaustion of constantly being the bigger person, the peacemaker, the one who holds space for everyone else, but never finds someone who can hold space for them. That's where many mature souls begin to awaken, not in some dramatic breakdown, but in quiet fatigue. You begin to realize that peace was never meant to cost you your self-respect, that love should not leave you questioning your worth. And so, one by one, you start to withdraw your energy from the things that once demanded it. You stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You stop begging for love that should have been freely given. You stop dancing around people's comfort zones just to earn a spot in their lives. This is the first thing mature souls refuse to tolerate anymore: emotional imbalance, the kind that drains you little by little, disguised as compromise. You've spent years trying to make it work with friends, lovers, even family, believing that if you gave a bit more, tried a bit harder, stayed a bit longer, things would change. But life keeps whispering the same truth. What constantly costs your peace is far too expensive for your spirit. And so, you learn the gentle art of stepping back, not as punishment, but as protection. Not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring about yourself too. The second thing you stop tolerating is emotional dishonesty within others and within yourself. You begin to notice the lies you tell yourself to keep certain people close. They didn't mean to hurt me. Maybe I'm just too sensitive. If I love them harder, they'll see my worth. No, those lies become too heavy to carry. Your heart starts demanding the truth, even when it hurts. Because somewhere deep down, your soul knows that peace cannot coexist with pretense. The versions of yourself that once survived by being agreeable, by staying silent, by hoping things would get better, they begin to crumble, not out of failure, but out of freedom. You start to crave authenticity the way a starving person craves food. You'd rather be alone in your truth than surrounded by people who can't meet you there. You no longer need to be liked, understood, or chosen. You only need to be real. And then comes the third thing you no longer tolerate: self-betrayal. You can't keep saying yes when your whole body says no. You can't keep showing up for others while abandoning yourself. You start catching those tiny moments when you laugh at something that actually hurt, when you agree to meet someone though you're exhausted, when you stay quiet just to avoid conflict. Those are the moments you stop betraying yourself. Because every time you silence your truth, you send a message to your soul that it doesn't matter. And mature souls can't live that way anymore. They crave integrity, not moral perfection, but alignment between what they feel, say, and do. And as you make these small shifts, something incredible begins to happen. You notice that the world doesn't collapse when you honor your boundaries. The people who truly love you start meeting you at your level. The ones who only loved your compliance quietly fade away. And for the first time, you start feeling lighter. Not happier, at least not yet, just lighter. The kind of lightness that comes when you're no longer dragging yourself through the wrong doors. You begin to understand that maturity is not about age. It's about energy, about knowing when something no longer serves your growth and having the courage to release it. So, if you've been feeling distant from old habits, old circles, old stories, don't panic. You're not falling apart. You're detaching. You're not losing people. You're losing illusions. And in that loss, something sacred begins to emerge. You. The you that was buried under expectations. The you that used to shrink so others could feel comfortable. The you that has always been waiting for your own permission to exist freely. So take a breath. Let that truth settle in your bones. You are allowed to stop tolerating what dims your spirit. You are allowed to choose peace over performance. You are allowed to walk away, even when no one understands why. Because your soul does, and it's been waiting a long time for this. There comes a moment when even kindness begins to ache, when you've poured yourself into too many empty cups and start to wonder who will pour into yours. That's when the next truth reveals itself. Mature souls no longer tolerate one-sided effort. They no longer chase energy that doesn't return home, because they've learned, often painfully, that love without reciprocity turns into self-erasure. You can't keep holding relationships together by yourself, not with lovers, not with friends, not with family. You can't be the only one calling, apologizing, showing up, trying to understand. The weight of that pattern crushes your light over time. So, you stop trying to convince people to care. You stop performing emotional CPR on connections that flatlined long ago. You stop confusing patience with self-neglect, and instead, you make peace with the silence that follows letting go. That silence is sacred. It's not emptiness, it's space. The kind of space your soul needs to breathe again after years of suffocating under unbalanced love. The next thing you refuse to tolerate is chaos, disguised as passion. There was a time when drama felt like intensity, when unpredictability felt like proof of something real. You mistook turbulence for connection because calm once felt foreign. But now you know that true love feels like exhale, not adrenaline. It feels safe, not overwhelming. Mature souls learn that peace isn't boring. It's healing. It's the quiet after the storm, the steady presence that doesn't demand you to prove your worth every day. And once you've tasted that kind of peace, even briefly, chaos loses its charm. You start protecting your inner calm the way you once protected your relationships. You no longer engage in every argument just to be right. You stop responding to every trigger as if it's a threat. You realize that not every invitation to conflict deserves your attendance. Some silences are wiser than words, and slowly, your energy shifts. You notice you're less reactive, less desperate to explain yourself, less willing to fight battles that lead nowhere. That's not apathy, that's emotional wisdom. You've simply learned that not everything deserves your fire. Some things only deserve your absence. Then, another subtle transformation begins. You stop tolerating environments that dishonor your growth. You used to stay in rooms where you had to dim your light just to make others comfortable. But the more you heal, the less you can tolerate spaces where truth feels like tension. You outgrow gossip, competition, the need to be seen as perfect. You crave realness now, conversations that nourish you, people who see your essence without needing you to perform. You start gravitating towards stillness, nature, art, solitude, things that speak your soul's language. And sometimes, that makes you feel lonely, because the path of a maturing soul is often quiet. But loneliness doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're in transition. You're shedding. You're preparing for alignment. And during this shedding, you also stop tolerating guilt for choosing yourself. For too long, you've been conditioned to see self-respect as selfishness. You've been taught that love means endless sacrifice, that being good means saying yes even when it breaks you. But maturity teaches you that love without self-respect is just codependency wearing perfume. It may smell sweet, but it suffocates you slowly. So now, you choose differently. You honor your needs without apology. You decline invitations that disturb your peace. You forgive yourself for all the times you stayed too long, spoke too softly, loved too hard. You realize that every mistake was just a part of your awakening, a chapter your soul needed to outgrow its illusions. And somewhere between all this unlearning and remembering, you find something precious: emotional freedom. The kind of freedom that doesn't need validation, doesn't chase closure, doesn't need to be understood. It's the peace that comes from knowing you've made it through storms without losing your tenderness. You stop trying to fix others because you finally see that healing was never your job. You were only meant to embody what wholeness looks like, so others could see what's possible. That's the quiet power of mature souls. They no longer preach, they embody. They don't need to prove their wisdom, their energy speaks for them. So, if you're in that space where everything that once made sense suddenly doesn't take heart, it means your soul is outgrowing what it's outlived. It means you're learning the art of peace. And sometimes, peace is simply the absence of what never deserved you. There comes a turning point when even nostalgia loses its hold on you. You stop craving what used to be, and you start honoring what truly is. That's when another deep truth unfolds. Mature souls no longer tolerate illusions of love. You used to mistake intensity for intimacy. You mistook attention for affection, and mixed emotional highs with connection. You believed that the people who stirred your deepest wounds were meant for you because they felt familiar. But now, you understand. Not everything that feels familiar is safe. Sometimes, it's just your pain trying to replay itself, hoping for a different ending. That's how your soul learns discernment, by getting heartbroken enough times to finally tell the difference between chemistry and compatibility. You start craving steadiness over sparks, substance over seduction, connection over confusion. And when someone tries to love you halfway, you no longer build bridges toward them. You let them meet you where you stand, or not at all. This is what maturity feels like: the soft refusal to participate in anything that dilutes your peace. You're not guarded, you're just grounded. You no longer let emotions hijack your intuition. You no longer try to save people from their own lessons. You love, but with awareness. You give, but with boundaries. You forgive, but without returning to the fire. The next thing you stop tolerating is self-punishment. The constant revisiting of your past mistakes, the endless mental rehearsing of, what if I had done it differently? Because you finally understand guilt doesn't heal, it only chains you to what you've already outgrown. Your younger self was doing the best they could with the understanding they had. They weren't weak, they were surviving. And now that you've grown, you owe them compassion, not judgment. You begin to talk to your past self the way you once needed someone to talk to you. Gently, patiently, lovingly. That's the power of self-awareness. It turns pain into wisdom. You start to see your scars not as shame, but as symbols of evolution. Every disappointment, every heartbreak, every betrayal, it all pushed you closer to truth. And one day, you catch yourself smiling, not because life is perfect, but because you're no longer running from it. You can finally sit with discomfort without trying to escape it. You can hold both gratitude and grief in the same breath. You can love yourself even when life feels uncertain. That's the quiet confidence of a mature soul. The peace that comes from realizing that not every ending was a loss, some were divine redirections. You no longer tolerate rushing. You stop racing toward milestones, proving your worth through productivity, or needing to be seen to feel significant. You begin to live slower, not lazily, but consciously. You start savoring ordinary moments: the morning light through your window, the way silence hums after rain, the warmth of your own company. And when someone asks what changed, you can't quite explain it. You just know you don't need external validation anymore. You've stopped chasing what was never yours and started tending to what always was, your own inner world. Then, perhaps the most liberating refusal of all emerges. You stop tolerating the idea that healing must look beautiful. You realize it's often messy, cyclical, non-linear. Some days you feel whole, others you fall apart. And that's okay. You no longer force yourself to be positive all the time. You honor your darkness too. Because Jung once whispered the truth through his work, wholeness is not found in the light, but in the integration of the shadow. Mature souls stop running from their pain. They learn to walk with it, gently, as if it were a child that only ever needed understanding. And that's when healing deepens. When you stop seeking to erase your wounds and instead start listening to them. You learn that every wound carried a message. You are ready to come home to yourself. So you stop apologizing for being sensitive, emotional, introspective. You see now that your depth is your gift, not a flaw to hide, but a compass to guide you. You've spent too many years shrinking your light to make others comfortable. Now you shine anyway, quietly, humbly, but unapologetically, because that's what maturity really is. Not hardness, not indifference, but clarity. The kind of clarity that no longer tolerates anything that costs you your authenticity. And in that clarity, you finally find yourself again, not the version the world told you to be, but the one your soul always knew you were. Eventually, something remarkable happens. You stop waiting for closure from others. You stop rehearsing old conversations in your mind, trying to make sense of what went wrong. You finally accept that not everyone has the emotional capacity to meet you in truth, and that's okay. Maturity teaches you that closure is not always a conversation. Sometimes it's a decision, a quiet, powerful one. I choose peace over answers. You no longer need to be understood to be at peace. You realize that understanding yourself is enough. You see that forgiveness isn't for the person who hurt you. It's for the version of you who kept hoping they would change. It's for the part of you that thought love had to mean endurance. Forgiveness becomes less about letting others off the hook and more about letting yourself off the leash. You stop carrying stories that aren't yours to hold. You stop looking for meaning in places that never valued your presence. And with every release, you create room for something sacred: stillness. Stillness becomes your teacher. It shows you that strength was never about enduring chaos, but about trusting calm. It whispers truths you couldn't hear before, that not everything broken needs fixing, that not everyone lost needs finding, that not every ending is a tragedy. And in that stillness, gratitude begins to bloom, not the forced kind that pretends everything is fine, but the quiet kind that simply honors what is. You start to notice beauty where pain used to live. You find small joys, a sunrise, a song, a moment of laughter with someone who sees you clearly. Those moments no longer feel fleeting, they feel divine. You no longer tolerate emotional noise. You stop scrolling endlessly, comparing your healing to others. You stop seeking validation through how wise or spiritual you appear. You start understanding that wisdom doesn't perform, it lives in how you move, how you speak, how you rest. And you rest differently now, not as escape, but as reverence. You honor your energy. You don't chase people or opportunities. You let alignment find you. You trust timing because you've learned that forcing what isn't ready always leads to pain. The next thing you stop tolerating is pretending to be okay when you're not. Mature souls know that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's truth. You start expressing your needs without shame. You cry when you need to, laugh when you want to, and say no when your spirit whispers no. You learn to hold yourself with the same tenderness you once begged others to give you. You realize that love doesn't have to come from outside. It can begin right here, with your own presence. And slowly, you build a life that feels like safety. Not excitement, safety. A rhythm that makes sense to your nervous system. A space where you no longer have to prove your worth. Where you can finally just be. You also stop tolerating the fear of starting over. Because you've done it so many times now, rebuilt from nothing, healed after endings, loved again after heartbreak, and you've seen that each rebirth only brought you closer to your truth. You're no longer afraid of losing people, because you've learned that what's meant for you will never require you to abandon yourself. You're no longer afraid of solitude, because it no longer feels empty, it feels holy. And maybe, just maybe, this is the quiet miracle of maturity. You no longer chase healing as a project. You live it as a practice. You no longer chase love as a rescue. You embody it as a state of being. You no longer chase peace as a goal. You protect it as a way of life. You become softer, not weaker, wiser, not colder, kinder, not naive. You understand that not everyone will join you on this path, and that's okay. You no longer grieve the ones who left you, bless them, because even their departure was part of your unfolding. You realize now that everything served a purpose. The pain, the loss, the confusion, all of it was leading you here, to this moment, this stillness, this clarity, this self. So, if you're listening right now and something in your heart feels lighter, it's because your soul recognizes this truth. You are no longer who you were, and that is something to be proud of. There comes a day when you look back and realize you're no longer living in reaction to your pain. You've stopped fighting ghosts. You've stopped trying to prove your worth to people who couldn't see it. And you stand there, quietly, knowing that your peace is no longer negotiable. You've learned that maturity isn't a destination, it's a devotion to truth, to growth, to the kind of love that starts within and radiates outward. You've learned that healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. It looks like choosing rest instead of running, silence instead of explanation, acceptance instead of resistance. You've learned that love, real love, will never demand that you shrink. It will never ask you to betray your intuition or abandon your needs. It will meet you where you are, not because it's perfect, but because it's honest. And so, you live differently now. You wake up with gratitude, not because everything is easy, but because you no longer measure life by ease. You measure it by depth, by truth, by the peace you feel when your actions align with your soul. You forgive people without reopening old doors. You bless your past without living in it. You trust your timing without demanding control. You honor your boundaries without apology. And most beautifully, you've learned to honor endings without labeling them as failure. Because endings are not proof of loss, they are proof of life. Proof that you've lived, loved, risked, and grown. Proof that you've had the courage to evolve, even when it meant walking away. And maybe that's what Carl Jung meant when he said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Not some distant, enlightened version of you, but this, the raw, real, present you. The one who has stopped tolerating what dishonors their peace. The one who loves deeply but wisely. The one who no longer confuses suffering with strength. If you're here, listening to these words, let them settle into you like a quiet blessing. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are becoming, and that becoming will never end. Because the soul is infinite in its unfolding, and every time you refuse to betray yourself, you step closer to the life that was always meant for you. So breathe. Let it in the softness, the clarity, the quiet power of your own becoming. You've done enough. You are enough. If these words found a place in your heart today, let them ripple outward. Share them, reflect on them, or simply carry them with you. And if you wish to walk further on this journey of awareness, healing, and truth, stay. Subscribe, connect, be part of this space where we remember what it means to live awake, because this world needs more souls like yours, not louder, not tougher, just truer. Thank you for listening. Thank you for feeling. Thank you for becoming.